Welcome to episode 26 of Super States Practices of Transformation with me, your host, Joshua Peters. Super States explores the overlap of trans states and all the ways you can use that to access personal or professional growth. In each episode, we talk to world-class experts, to industry leaders, and to revolutionary thinkers who share the latest information, tools, and their own personal stories to inspire you on your journey. This week, I talk with Gabriel Kazan. Gabriel is an author and a transformational coach who's passionate about guiding men to discover their purpose and conquer their fears. He's got a unique approach on men's work and personal growth, and he shares it all in this episode. Ready to learn the power of men's work? Stay tuned for the transformational power of men's work with Gabriel Kazan. Welcome to Super States. I am here with Gabriel Kazan. Gabriel, excited to have you on the show today.
Thank you. Great to be here and looking forward to connecting.
Awesome. Gabriel, why don't you tell us what it is that you do and how that makes a difference for people's lives?
Well, that's a great question. I lead transformation inside of what I sometimes jokingly call my truth-telling business, because when we actually get right inside the pocket, that's really all we're doing, is getting really raw and real with the truth. Whether we call it therapy or coaching, these days it's coaching because it's future focused, but my toolkit includes therapeutic tools, so we cover that ground too. And typically I work with married men raising kids, most often business owners, executives and founders who are, feeling that trifecta of insanity of being the dad, being the husband, and being the leader in their work, and somehow needing to find a way to keep it all going.
I resonate with that, Gabriel. Share with us how you got to this point. So maybe your backstory.
Well, good question. I was a therapist for 6 years, and I ran men's groups on the side for 3 years straight. And so I really got into the form of men's work and group work and getting inside of the pain that men are in and the quiet and silent struggles that many men deal with. So that became a passion. And at some point, I realized I wanted to deliver more transformation. And I needed, in order to do that, to expand into the coaching game, because therapy tends towards looking at trauma and problems. And the trouble with focus is that whatever you focus on, you get more of.
Yeah.
And so with coaching, we very much intentionally create goals and visions, and really stick to the methods that are optimized in terms of leadership to get there and to make that happen, to address the obstacles seen and unseen. And so that's how and why I ended up now doing this, and way more fulfilled too with the future focused work, and feels like a full expression of the toolkit of transformation.
Yeah, I resonate with what you're doing. It's so important. As you said, what you focus on is what you get. So let's focus on what you want on the future. Now, we talk a lot about altered states and personal growth, professional growth. Tell us some of the ways that you use these kinds of states to transform.
Well, that's great. I mean, the first place most people think of is plant medicine, right? Like magic mushrooms or ayahuasca or peyote, and those, we can get to those. But before we do, I want to acknowledge that the way I see it, so many of our mundane day-to-day things also are altered states, like when
Yeah.
I go to jujitsu once a week, I'm in an altered state. Nothing, rational makes sense. I'm in this primal place of just
Yeah.
grinding and sweating and trying to survive and not get choked out. And it awakens all those chemicals too. So when I was training to become a therapist, also as an art therapist, which is one of the disciplines I studied, there's
Okay.
there's tons of theory around the intersection of art, soul work, and therapy, because they both have that inner life expression thing. But at some point, someone pointed out that just making art is a psychotic experience, because you're on purpose kind of leaving the world behind. And whether you're writing and going into your imagination, or you're creating an image or an object, you kind of go into crazy, obsessive, altered state just by being, willing to create and make a mess. So I also want to acknowledge those gateways on the path towards talking about actual plant medicine integration, which seems to be the holy grail of like the leading edge of this psychedelic renaissance, or whatever you want to say we're in. And it's exciting. It's exciting times to see these master plant spirit medicines come back into our modern world and create huge pattern interrupts for people.
Yeah.
So yeah,
but as you say, there's so many different ways, right, to access these types of states, whether it is like jujitsu, whether it's dancing, whether it's listening to music, creating art. Like there's so many ways to create an altered state, that it isn't just that you need a plant medicine, to your point.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, there's a great hunger. And one of the elders I used to listen to a lot used to say, when I asked him to define addiction, he talked about, well, like what his elders and medicine people used to say is that it's a primary human need to change your consciousness. To just for a moment remove any shame around addiction or alcohol or anything, like, and all that we think clinically how it should be. It's like, as human beings, to be only seeing one reality becomes intolerable. We need state change. We need to master state change. Yeah. We need to be able to know how to do this. And so, yeah, the plant spirit medicines are big wake up calls for doing that in a like way that kind of beyond language, and we can do our best. Yeah.
And as you're doing your men's work, do you incorporate any, maybe not the plant medicines, but are you incorporating any of these state change techniques or technologies with your clients?
Well, absolutely. Like, there are times live on the call, especially if we're in a Zoom room or something, where, just like in a martial arts experience, what we're actually dealing with is energy, intent. And so if things get energetically kind of downshifted and sort of slumped and collapsed somatically, then sometimes I might, challenge someone to stand up, do some wall push-ups, or move around, and just get into their body, get into their breath, do some breath work. Or even if somebody's really anxious or in their head about all that's up here, then we'll take a pause and we'll do 5 minutes of breath work and just drop into the body and really listen to that body mind link and say, okay, what's my body telling me? Where's the tension? And try and decode what the message is there. So, those are the kind of go-tos. But I haven't really been, other than somatic integration, I haven't really integrated plant medicine usage in my business, other than supporting people to prepare for their own journeys. And then, when they return, bringing it home. Because I notice some people will get into going to ayahuasca ceremonies, but have an absence of places where they can actually integrate what just happened
Yeah.
and what they saw and what they were shown. And then it's kind of back to the grind on Monday. And then how do
Right.
you, you know, integrate that? And so I find somatic, body centered practice to be the best way to really bring it into the body and make the change stick.
I like that. And I notice that too. And it doesn't have to be just with plant medicine, but any kind of big experience. We tend to put that in this box of big experience, whatever it was. And then life is over here, which doesn't necessarily get to take the learnings that you got from that big experience.
Yeah.
What would you say has changed the most about your work from when you first started till now?
Well, I think I'm just way more direct with the truth telling. And, you know, going through years as a therapist, there's a bias towards passivity and just listening deeply, and not, there's almost a taboo in therapy around giving advice or giving direction. It's like you're just there to hold this container, this loving, warm place, which, you know, it's kind of like therapy is a place to go to put your wound in a cup of warm water. Like, there it is. It feels better. You know, there's just this unconditionally loving space, which is essential and wonderful. But nowadays, especially with men, what we actually need is to be confronted, especially on the places where we're passive or undecided. And so we need to go into those decision-making areas where there's fear and there's uncertainty, and like hit it head on. So now I'm listening for those places, and I'm going to pull the thread of that and say, let's go there. Let's make a decision, you know, in that place that you're most afraid of.
Yeah. I've noticed from my own life, that's always the places that the growth is those places that there's fear.
Yeah.
And if I remember right from looking at the cover of your book, that has a lot to do with what your book is about as well. Is that correct?
Yeah. The subtitle is Unclench from Fear and Step into Your Power, Backbone, Heart, and Balls. And
I love that.
Obviously, it's a book for men. And it's very much about that embodied axis of potency and power and decision-making, which runs down a man's midline, like if we were looking at the body. You know, we do need all three of those. We need backbone. We need to set limits. We need to face our fears, and we need our balls. We need to look at all the places we gave our balls away and get them back. And of course, the heart being the sort of central compass in navigating all of it. And knowing what we want, knowing, the desire piece becomes way more about the coaching and the vision and, you know, what do you want? That's what I like to say is the $1 million question with my clients is like, ultimately, what do you want? What do you want? And often there's a freeze response, like, you mean I can have what I want? You know? So apart from running a truth-telling business, I also joke that I am just here to give permission. I'm just here to hold this container, go into the fear, and then say, yep, you know, hey, bro, give yourself permission, rise up, and you can face that fear, and it's not as scary as you thought, or take that action, or stop lying to yourself, and then the breakthroughs come, you know, and I don't know where I was going with that, but that's where.
Yeah, no, I'm curious if you find a theme with your clients, like what's their biggest block or challenge that they might be facing?
Well, usually the pattern I noticed was that guys who were coming to me when the relationship was up in the air, and they were sometimes being faced with an ultimatum, like either you fix this or it's a divorce. So now I'm talking a lot in my outward facing messaging about preventing divorce, and, you know, the 5 steps that I've come up with to prevent divorce for married men who need to master their marriage. And a lot of that has to do with masculine communication and not only leading their life in the areas where the assumption is, yes, you have to lead here, you have to create, but not neglecting the relationship and also leading there. And the correlation between the bedroom and the boardroom, it's all backbone, heart, and balls. It's all about presence and clear communication and expressing that desire and, having the willingness to follow through and execute. So yeah, in terms of like, whether it's health, wealth, or relationships, what I've discovered is my real zone of genius is the relationship zone, because that's the pain that I can most immediately help men resolve. And then the funny thing is, once they get those ahas and like, oh, okay, now the relationship's better, but now they realize that they're working with me for themselves, not just to fix the relationship, but to grow as a man more into their deeper purpose, and to, know what they want and have that clarity.
And so your book is Alive on Purpose. Can you tell us what you could expect to get from your book?
Well, it's like, it's a workbook for men to look at what's my purpose and how do I blast through my fears. And I had one reader tell me it's like a whole coaching program unto itself, because it's you work through it, and purpose, power, and courage are the three kind of edges of the spear tip. And and that has been my experience, that when men are aligned with their purpose, they know who they are and what they want. That's how I define purpose. Then they become bulletproof and they become unstoppable. The trouble is, sometimes in life we'll complete a cycle of our purpose, and then we have to face the unknown and face some new purpose and be willing to kind of get a white belt and say, okay, this is now where I'm facing, and start something new. Which it can be scary, because we can have a sunk cost in our investment of who we think we are until those, midlife crises hit or whatever, and we have to face something we haven't been willing to look at. So that's the best time to dig our shovels into the ground and say, okay, well, what's my purpose now? And just open up to that great mystery and start getting some new direction.
Yeah. So I've seen a lot of men's coaches out there, and you see all different types of them, right? You see a lot of, I think of them as like bro coaches, like the bro masculine kind of coaching. And then you see people that are just really focused on doing. So what would you say? I know you said relationships is your kind of zone of genius, but what is different about how you work with men than some of these others?
Well, I don't know anyone doing things exactly the way I do it, because I've woven together such a unique personal collection of disciplines. We go deep, and I like to get my clients to look at the 4 domains of finance, faith, family, and fitness, and how they all reinforce each other, and they keep a man on axis in his center, especially the fitness. More and more that's becoming a focus. Even though I'm not a fitness coach, I just know that where it all comes home is in the body. That's where we encounter the fears. We can get in our heads about our story, but when I go to the gym and I sweat it out and twist it out and lift and push, then I have this homecoming. I sometimes call the gym my church. Sometimes I can understand why The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, calls it the Iron Paradise, because in my 20s and 30s, I was just a yogi. I just did yoga, but at some point, especially in my 40s, you have to work the tissue or you lose it. Right? With muscle tissue, it's use it or lose it. So I've fallen in love with the smell of steel on my palms from the barbells, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting it. I'm like, oh, now I know why people get really into the gym. So the fitness is one piece, but the other deepest of the deep end in terms of men's work, in my experience, is what I call father work. And so I walk the men I work with through a series of processes and guided visualizations and inner journaling work, looking at their own relationship with their dad. And if you want to get a group of men in a room getting real really quick, you do a go around the circle and ask every man to tell the other man about their father. Because every man has some unfinished business with his dad, and because there's always a mix of gold and garbage. There's the gold, there's the blessings, the things we receive, the love, but to tease that apart from the garbage, like the places where needs didn't get met or he wasn't there, or, you know, whatever it is, sometimes there's a lot of father anger too, or sure, father hunger, or any combination thereof. So guys get real, and then they realize, you know, that there's a lot in there. And there's one exercise you can do with a group of men where when you introduce each other, you can start by saying your name and also that you are the son of, and say your dad's first name. And just that alone shifts it. Oh, like I'm, you know, John, son of Peter, or, you know, because guys will get real and then some emotions come up. But walking through the process with me, we look at what's there energetically, because often it's a place of permission giving, of blessing, and a place where a man finds more inner authority as a creator, as a businessman, as a father himself, for him to show up more potently. So that's kind of one thing I don't know anyone else doing. And it's a process I inherited from some of my own mentors, to just go really deep. And they say brotherhood is the healing balm of where any father wounds still live. You know, we need that band of brothers, or that coach or mentor who can kind of walk us through that place. And it can't be our wives, and it can't be women. It can't be children. Men need to be each other's brothers in this way, and work out that stuff. And then the results on the other side, time and time again, the guys who are my clients say that that's been the most powerful thing of all the things they've done with me, is to go deep into the father work and come out the other side with all these insights, and also feel like that line of 1,000 men behind you who are your ancestors, who are your dad and his and grandfathers, and feel like they've got your back. Because when you feel that ancestral blessing, it's a kind of a great shortcut to have your own back, which is the reason a lot of men hold themselves back, because they don't back themselves and say, like, I'm going to choose me. I'm going to bet on me, and I'm going to go all in, you know, on whatever they're creating. The ripple effect of that work is just so huge in business and in relationship, both.
Yeah, I can see how that would be extremely powerful. Like, even just the fact of having that band of brothers, like you're talking about, like it's vital for men to have other men in their lives. And I know for myself, there were years when I couldn't be real with other men and just had been shut off. So I'm grateful that I have circles like that now. Yeah.
And I had that moment when I first joined a men's group. I realized I didn't trust men. I looked around the room and I was like, I said, I don't feel like I trust you guys. I don't trust men in general. And then, the process was every man put his hand up because he could relate to me. And, and that's a great insight, but the actual insight didn't pay off until I, months later, got the quantum leap from it, which I realized that my reflection of not trusting men was a hologram of not trusting myself. And then I was like, oh, okay, I get it now, because I was confronting my learned helplessness, all I didn't know about growing my business, about whatever I was up to. And then I started trusting myself. And that X factor of self-trust is like such a game changer in personal or professionally. It's the thing.
Yeah. Yeah, vital lesson. One I'm still learning.
Yes.
Trusting in yourself, right? What would you say is the most misunderstood aspect of men's work?
That's a great question. Um, well, I guess I can only talk from and into my experience at this moment, because
Sure.
I feel like men's work is such a generic term of men, doing some inner work, some inner looking to
Hmm.
become a better man. Like, let's, for the moment, define it that way. And whether
Sure.
you're doing that, in nature or with horses or with plant medicine, or there's no right or wrong, or, just with a racquetball, whatever. Um, I feel like inside of those groups, there also can become a culture of victimhood. And when I ran those groups for 3 years, what I realized is there's a difference between a support group and transformational leadership. And the shadow of a support group is that it's going to reaffirm all of your hurts and wounds and victim stories, but it may also keep you entangled in them and not
Right.
moving forward. It's like, it's okay. Kind of AA is the perfect example of, if you only get through that and then stay in that, and that becomes your new identity as a victim or a survivor,
Right.
then you don't actually get that push to raise your standard, to follow your vision, to trust yourself, and actually get the breakthroughs around becoming fully expressed in your purpose, whatever that is for that man. So yeah, I feel like there are stages, and also the challenging mirror of men's work, because you can have a group of men in a room with completely polar opposite issues, which is a blessing, to see that some guys need to slow the F down. And other guys need to wake the F up, and
Yeah.
so that's also the blessing. But I think the generic term men's work, it's vague, because you get men's groups who are doing all this raw primal warrior like stuff, and that's great. And then you get another end of the spectrum is a lot of guys who are just sitting around and wanting a safe space to speak from their heart. And it's like, there's no right or wrong, there's no right or wrong. It's just whatever that man needs at that time is the thing he should kind of look for, and make sure he's aligned, because you can get stuck in one of those support groups for too long and lose sight of like what you're wanting in the first place, if you don't say, okay, this is where I'm going.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing out of all that is there's just so many different ways that men need to be supported, or might want to be supported, that you find what way works best for you. And the other thing that occurs to me is, this is just human. This is human group.
Yeah.
Although we're putting the men have their own set of challenges, just like women have their own set of challenges, but we're all humans and we all have human challenges as well.
Yeah. And I think there's also a great taboo around men and anger, or even just men doing this type of work. I think when it first came up in the late 80s and 90s, when Robert Bly wrote Iron John, the mainstream media very much parodied it and made it into a joke. Like, oh yeah, a bunch of guys who were running around naked in the woods banging on a drum. It's like, and so yeah, it's easy to see it as a cliche. But until you're, down on your knees in that sweat lodge, confronting your pain, and someone's pouring the water and there's steam, and you're really, releasing something awful and old, you won't know the blessing of actually going into those scary places, and doing that kind of work. Yeah, I think also there's something about containment and release, and, keeping the mess of men's work contained enough so that men feel like they can really open up and go deep, and then come out, a clean, clear, fierce, better man.
If there is a man listening to this podcast who's kind of in that space that you're talking about, who's been holding himself back, or in whatever way, what's the first step that they could do to start moving past their own fear?
Get out of self-isolation, because I think the number one killer, and I use that word on purpose, for men, is self-isolation. It can be a killer. You look at the suicide rates. Even guys who are a quote unquote success can feel really isolated. Family men, married men raising kids can be together with their wife and family, but feel totally alone in their actual struggle and their decision making. So yeah, just connection itself, like just reaching out to that brother, that old friend who you haven't talked to in years, can be an amazing first step. And yeah, I'd say that's one thing. And then, getting interested in it. I've had guys come to me to do a bit of work together and then thank me months later because I opened them up to this world of this movement of men coming together and working this field. And there's so many subgroups, leading edge inside of men's work, and having conversations like this one on a podcast and hearing someone share what opened them up and how they got through their dark night of soul. That's also happening, all the time. Is this the river's always going. All you got to do is step into it and go, okay, yeah. And face your fears of coming out of your self-isolation and taking off the mask. If the trouble with it, Joshua, is that, psychology has always had a fascination with this dichotomy between the true inner self and the false self. Like this is stuff they've been writing about for 100 years. And this, but these days it's even more confusing because we don't just have that classic true self, false self, but there's the digital facade.
Right. How
many times have you seen someone, post a picture of themselves on the beach with the sunset looking like paradise, but that person's going through like the hell week of their worst week of their life or whatever. So I think looking around the digital facade of how we present ourselves and everyone seeking the holy grail of authenticity, but then wearing the false self mask of look at how authentic I am. It's a crazy world, like the social media world. But I feel like there's also like God is in the algorithm. And if you're looking, you will find what you're looking for, and it might even come to you, through the noise, and you'll hear the signal through the noise.
When you're looking for inspiration, where do you go? Like, do you have a mentor, role model?
I follow a series of people and influencers who just speak to me. And I mean, it's hard to pick any specific one. I mean, I got really into Ben Hardy's books this year. 10X is easier than 2X. And I love his work on transformational leadership. And right now I'm in the middle of listening to the audiobook by Dan Martell on Buy Back Your Time.
Yeah, so, that one has been coming up a lot for me too.
Yeah, so it's mostly like CEO stuff because I'm in my business initiation. Like that's the initiation I'm in. And like some guys are going through the, relationship initiation or the, getting your health back initiation. But for me, that's my leading edge is I'm figuring out how to do this thing better called business.
Yeah. How do you envision the future of these types of men's groups? What's giving you hope about what you're creating, what you're seeing, getting expressed out there?
Uh, I I think it's not only men doing the initiatory work of getting real with each other and
Mm,
raising the standards and going all in on their commitments, uh, but the downstream is creating spaces for youth, for
mm,
rites of passage. Before I launched my business, I kind of got it backwards. Actually, I started a nonprofit in 2018 with the mission of restoring rites of passage for male youth.
mm-hmm.
And I ran a camp, and it was great. Um, and I want to do more of it, and I'm going to come back to that. I still have people in my community who are running those types of groups for youth, and I think that's, I mean, for me, I went through a very deep, dark night of the soul when I was 18, and it set me on a path of being a seeker. But if
Mm-hmm.
we're going to recover some sanity in our world, we need to empower young men to get on the path early and know that so much of what they're being sold and told is a lie, and
Yeah.
to connect with the right mentorship. So yeah, I love seeing organizations do that when they're also creating like father son weekends, or any type of mentorship, rites of passage place for male youth to wrestle together, wrestle into the questions of what is a man and what is a warrior, and what how do we figure this out. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of, I see the evolution of it
Mm-hmm.
is just changing, culture change, and on that front, and empowering each other as brothers, but also looking out for the ones coming up after us.
Talk about altered states. Like that's got to be one of the most powerful ways to create a change in someone's outlook on themselves, is to go through that kind of initiatory process, like you're talking about for a young person, instead of what you and I had to do, which is hit the wall. I mean, maybe I'll talk about myself. Hit the wall and then realize I don't want to hit the wall again.
Yeah,
What can I do to not hit that wall? And then and then still hit the wall, but I had a little bit more tools.
that's right. You're going to hit the wall regardless.
Yeah.
Pain is inevitable. It's the suffering that's optional. That's how I like to say it.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think that's a part of the alchemy of stepping back. I got two sons now, 4 and 10, and
Mm-hmm.
letting them learn the lessons and make the mistakes and hurt themselves from time to time is something I'm learning to do. And then, I'll be there for them. But yeah, the parenting initiation is the other side of it. And these
Mm-hmm.
days, we're also in such an era of divorce rates that blended families are so common that figuring out how to step parent is also just as important as parenting, and
Sure.
how to show up and make it all work, and do that, inner gymnastics to find the right relationship, which there is no right model for between, step kids and parents. And I got 2 bonus daughters who are in their mid 20s. And so,
Okay.
yeah, that's another thing to master in the game of family and marriage mastery.
Yeah, we have such opportunities and challenges in the way that we're blending those families together, but it's also leaves up creates a lot of really amazing relationships for people. Gabriel, if people want to learn more about you, what is the best way for them to do that?
Well, right now my website's still more or less under construction. So Facebook is the platform I'm most post on. So they could reach out to me there and send me a message if you want to chat. I also have started a YouTube channel named after my book called Alive on Purpose with Gabriel Kazan. I've got a few talks on there now, and I love getting on there and, jamming. And then my book, Alive on Purpose, is on Amazon. So that's a place to find it.
Great. I'll
Yeah.
make sure to put links to all 3 of those, and we'll put your website on there if it's ready yet as well. And Gabriel, if there was one insight that you want the audience to leave with today, what would that be?
Give yourself permission.
Yeah, I love that. It's been fantastic talking with you. Thanks so much for being on the show today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please go ahead and leave me a 5-star review on this podcast. That's really the best way to expand this message, and it would mean a lot to me. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on YouTube so you can stay up to date with Super States. Also, let me know what kind of topics or guests you'd like me to cover in future episodes. You can just respond in the comments below. You can also find me on nearly all the social media sites out there at Joshua Ray Peters. That's R-E-Y. I promise I'll answer your comments. I'll see you all next week. Remember now, you carry the seeds of change inside. So stay curious, keep growing, and embrace your transformation.